I'm asking myself this one question more and more frequently. Am I getting older or am I getting wiser? And that's perhaps really well exemplified in the fact that I've been listening to Vivaldi's Four Seasons every single morning for the last 3 years. So it's well over 1,000 deep listens, particularly in the Pizz and minor, which I just think is some of the most beautiful writing I've ever heard in my life. It's just so sweet on my ears. It's the counterpoint, it's the ornamentation. It's as if you're reading like almost Shakespearean quotes for every little phrase that he writes. It's just so beautiful. And I keep hearing the future. Vivaldi is the future of music to my ears. So I find myself like, okay, I'm 300 some plus years back in time, and yet I feel it's the future. So that all came to fruition in one single question. And that for me is like, what would the modern Baroque sound like? I just love everything about Vivaldi, especially the melodies and the counter melodies, which is just sort of the highlight of deeply memorable melodic writing. I just think it's so beautiful. So I also got a little bit of envious because I'm just like, he's doing so many things that I can't do with any existing libraries. There's so many ways he's writing for strings in particular, ornaments, arpeggiations, ostinatos that I don't have in conventional libraries. So I decided to embark on a deep journey and record all that. And that journey begins today with the first out of many in our Vivaldi series, namely our 1676 Harpsichord. It's one of the most beautiful harpsichords I've ever heard. It actually has 2 keyboards, which must have been super advanced for its time, knowing that it's over 300 years old. But as you'll see today, as we explore this idea of the modern Baroque, it doesn't have to sound old. In fact, I don't play Baroque music really, that's not my style, but I'm so curious about taking this instrument and bringing it into the future. Let's try new styles of music with it. Let's see how it holds up with a mix anno 2025. And just to explore what this idea of new music forms could be, but with a deep homage and respect to the past, which has always been the future. For any of you guys who've made music for a long time, I think we all come to the realization at some point that it's somewhat cyclical. And I'm just starting to ask myself more and more like, well, what else is hidden in the past? For me, I would have taken for granted from the day the Four Seasons was first presented that it would have been in the mainstream consciousness forever, musically speaking. But that's actually not the case. Vivaldi had a sort of typical artist career. He really grew in the beginning and the middle of it, but Baroque wasn't cool in the end. Modern classical symphonic music, the sonata form was taking over, and people didn't want to deal with this sort of Baroque thing. It happened to other great composers, even Beethoven suffered from it as well at this time. This sort of notion of being forgotten or irrelevant. And the story goes that Vivaldi was almost forgotten for 200 years, and we have to go to the 1920s in the Turin Library before musicologists actually dig up his beautiful works and sort of goes like, oh my God, masterpiece. If some of the most beautiful music I've ever heard was sort of just lying in the ether of forgottenness, like what else is there? And what happens if we take all these things that he wrote with that we're rediscovering that are clearly timeless in their essence and bring them forward to like our times? So in other words, welcome to Soundpaint. Welcome to our 1676 Vivaldi Harpsichord. Don't necessarily expect this to be a Baroque journey. I have a looper, a hardware looper that I'm using together with Soundpaint. So whatever you hear me do is just me being like Jackson Pollock with Soundpaint libraries and just throwing them in the looper, but with a particular emphasis on the harpsichord, which we're gonna go deep into. So welcome and thanks for listening. Everything you hear in everything I do with the looper is coming from Soundpaint. Let me just try to dissect very quickly. Most of this was actually just made with the harpsichord. Very simple.
So that one, for example, could be coming from our combination, spot clean. We have 8 different microphones, 4 of them are spots. They are very close and intimate in their sound. To me, this just brings me right back to the recordings. I feel like I'm just sitting with the instrument right in front of it. The sound is so present and rewardingly acoustic. Now, we have a lot of different harpsichords. If we look at the directories here, we'll notice that we got combinations, singles, and sound labs. If I take you on the backside and we look at the microphones, it's pretty vast what we got here. Because it's a 2-keyboard harpsichord, meaning that they actually had 2 physical keyboards, there are many ways they can be recorded. And there's also stops and clutches and all these sort of devices on the harpsichord that we also recorded to great extension. So if you notice here, we got 8 different microphones. A true and trusted Royer are TLM Neumanns, XY, AKG, rear, and 4 spot microphones. And then the list just goes down with all the microphone positions. We got low manual, meaning that we're playing with the lower keyboard. We have no clutch, we have noises, we have traditional sustained where the whole instrument is ringing, just a beautiful sound. We have top manual where we're isolating the top keyboard so the bottom keyboard doesn't play, with clutch as well. And in combination, that gives us so many different percussive tonal colors. When I say percussive, it's because we've both recorded the harpsichord very, very shortly. Think about like spiccato for strings. That's a unique sound to the instrument. And then we also have natural sustains. There's a bucket load of round robins in the library, so everything is super bubbly and alive. The harpsichord is not particularly velocity-based, even though you can play it that way and we record it that way as well. Very good players can emit a few velocities to the harpsichords, but commonly it's a plucked instrument. It really only had one dynamic. But that's why we do so much with the round robin here as well. It just feels more alive. Sometimes with the best pop music, it almost has like a simplistic, repetitive quality to it. But it takes time to find the melodies, and it must have taken a long time to find lyrics for this amazing song, Messy by Lola Young. I just love that song. But I thought it could be interesting to try to, just make it with an old harpsichord from 1676. One of it was just add a very simple harpsichord going like... and then add a little bit of drums. That's coming from our Blackbird kit in Soundpaint. And then a little extra. This is from our new acoustic instant guitar that we just released and our old P bass in Soundpaint. Nothing fancy in its own, but you start putting together. And down in the synths, we got our beautiful J8X, just one of the sweetest pad synthesizers ever created. And then, it's just me jamming a little bit more harpsichord on top. Well, it's both a harpsichord and then our Juno 60 as well. This is a hidden gem in the library, meaning that if you own the Juno library, you can unlock this patch because you own both libraries. We'll see down here called Juno 60. It's such a sweet marriage between plucked sounds on a vintage synthesizer and then going plus 300 years back in time and combining that with a harpsichord. Sweet, sweet combo. So I wanted to just try sort of a new pop rock kind of style, but using the harpsichord in sort of aggression guitar fashion. We'll notice that we have three main directories in the libraries: combinations, singles, and sound labs. Combinations is where we take different kind of articulations from the harpsichord, put them together. Singles is just single articulations, single parts, so we can really truly hear the instrument in its more root condition. And then down here in sound labs, a variety of combinations using other libraries in Soundpaint, combining the whole thing. One of the best decisions I think I ever made for Soundpaint was to make sure that all instruments always live together. It's been a long, long road to get here, and we were in many ways just getting started, but having so many deep sample instruments right at my fingertips is so sweet for like patch making. But let me just play a couple of combinations here. It's a lot of movement. We have all these different spot microphones and different articulations blended together, both coming from the top keyboard here called top manual, but also another articulations with no clutch. Let me just isolate them one by one so you can hear. First with the spots here. It's a sweet sound. It's a little bit of a more muted kind of harpsichord up there. And then down here with the no clutch, we get for me, that's the more percussive side of the harpsichord, but we combine the two, the sort of longer sustains with that very short, no clutch kind of sound, and we get. Here's another articulation with the sustains and the top piano combined. Sustains meaning that both keyboards are playing fully, but we're also accentuating the top manual keyboard. I love all the movement. You can hear all the sort of mechanics in the instrument. It's so beautiful. It's alive. Isn't that so pretty? Let me just play the different microphones just side by side so you can hear them. In this one here, I had the top keyboard and the lower keyboard, but the lower one recorded with microphones further away and the top one with closer. I think such a great combination. So listening to the lower key bed on the harpsichord, all the different mics, beginning with the rear. We can hear the room a little bit with the Royal mic. We're a little bit closer to the instrument, and then with the spot mics, notice that they are in mono, but they all have different colors. And if we combine two spots, let's just take a 2 and 4 here randomly, and we pan them left and right, then you're going to get the real cool sound of spot microphones. That's how to use them. You want to spread them ideally in a stereo field. can do the same with other spots. Let's try 3 and 4 here. Totally different color. Both very intimate. Here's a couple of our singles, meaning that we're focusing on one particular articulation. We may see a couple of parts here, but that's just to cover the microphone so we have the most beautiful, lush perspective. Sometimes, especially in Soundpaint, because we can drag in and try things so quickly, we'll find like unique blends that we never heard before. Who would have thought that a Santur and a Harpsichord would go together, even though the Santur, being sort of plucked as well, or played with mallets, has a semi sort of pluggy quality to it. Ooh, what's that? Now, in the path of like exploring the pathway towards modern Baroque, for me at least, I had to go through certain styles I keep coming back to because I love them so much. More funky kind of style being one of them. How does the Harpsichord from 1676 fare against a modern funk mix? So I'm going to try to find the best sound to match this here. It's not because I have anything in mind, so I'll show you the process I go through. I'm looking for something contemporary that sort of cuts through, like a little bit like you do with a traditional clavinet. I guess what I'm really looking for is that sort of clavinet sound. And why not just combine a real clavinet with a harpsichord? It's kind of running with the clav in a funky sense. That's sort of an instrument we think about like the 60s and the 70s. But now we can combine the electric clavinet with the old school harpsichords. What a sweet sound as well. So in this case, the Harpsichord meets the DX7 Harp. Isn't it pretty? I just love that combo. also took a variety of pizzicatos and harps and combined them with the harpsichord. I was like, anything that reminds me about harps. So whether that's real harps, whether that's violin pizzicatos from our disco strings, or it's centurion harps, we have it all together in a glorious albumage.
And just one last word. The Grammys just passed by. I didn't have the good fortune or fortitude to stomach the whole thing. So I read the news the next day and I noticed that there were sort of two camps. The first camp is celebrating all the wonderful artists that finally got discovered who had never been in the limelight or spotlight before. I think that's beautiful and that's the Grammys at their best. And then on the other hand, I also see some questions in regards to like, why are we celebrating those who are already celebrated? Like the Beatles got 7 Grammys, I think, and Sinatra got 11, and there are much more contemporary artists getting 20 or 30. Like the Beatles got Best Rock Album of the Year for something they wrote 45 years ago, as if there had been no other relevant rock band writing this entire last year or apparently like several decades. Like it's just a little bit out of touch with reality. I also think we're coming further away from what music is really about. So for me, the Grammys actually seems a little bit old. Like what's new about it? Why are we celebrating those things we've already seen and heard a million times before? Why are we celebrating McDonald's for the ear on occasions? Like, what about all the real deep beauty out there that truly made music what it is? Either in dialogue with themselves, as we all just play music to and for ourselves often, or as a part of a little community. But it had a whole different role. And for me, the future of music is about that role. It's about the deeper meaning of music and how we together can evolve the musical language. So this whole thing about Vivaldi is really not to like make anyone out there make Baroque music, even though you can do that. It's much more about exploring like what's coming down the lane. Let's try to figure out together what this modern Baroque or another style could be. That's where the real journey is, or at least for me. Thanks for watching.